Welcome into the EMAW Online Podcast. Mason Voth, Alec Bussey here with you from EMAW Online as we get set to talk more about the Cats and everything happening with their basketball season. It is as good of a start as you could have hoped for K-State. They are now 15-1, 4-0 in Big 12 play, and they have beaten two really good teams, or one, they're really good teams still, but they're not what we thought they might be at various points, in Texas and Baylor. A solid team in West Virginia, same for Oklahoma State. And now the schedule starts to beef up a little bit more as they hit the road for Fort Worth this weekend to take on TCU. And then the big one with Kansas coming to town on Tuesday that everybody will be excited for. But things are going well. There are three teams atop the Big 12. KU and Iowa State are there. That will change after this weekend because those two teams play in Allen Fieldhouse. There have been close calls the last two games in Allen for the Jayhawks, and it's also their 125th basketball anniversary celebration this weekend. So I give the Cyclones absolutely no shot at winning in Allen this weekend. So whenever the line comes out before we hit the road to Texas, I will be placing my legal wager on the Jayhawks come Saturday or tonight when we're recording this on Friday, because they won me money on Tuesday. Because as I told you, even when they were down 10 points and then it was 7, they always come back in those situations. It's Allen Fieldhouse. They always win those games. And Vegas, they're a bunch of idiots if they haven't learned that over the last however many years. KU never loses in Allen Fieldhouse. No matter the deficit, no matter the situation, they always find a way to win. So that was some easy money that came my way.
Deficit to Kentucky last year.
Well, that might be the one situation that they can't come back from. But they came back the rest of the way that season. I should have known. That's the next rule too. If they get blown out by 30 by somebody, then you just put money on them to win the national championship because they're going to come back from it in an even bigger way. So we've got a lot to talk about with the Big 12, but let's start with the Wildcats, who gritted out a victory against Oklahoma State last week, I guess it was this week, but last Tuesday. Oklahoma State is not a good offensive team. They were without Musa Cisse, who is not much of an offensive threat for him at times, but he is a big deterrent on the inside, can do some things defensively. And K-State, for the most part, had the lead a majority of the game. They were down at halftime, though, and Oklahoma State, every time K-State tried to make that little run, the Cowboys had a bit of an answer. What did you make of the game on Tuesday, and does it say anything one way or the other about K-State's future this year?
Yeah, I thought that beating Oklahoma State the way they did was really impressive from the standpoint that we've seen K-State kind of blow teams out. Maybe not blow teams out. We've seen them post really impressive scoring numbers in their two previous Big 12 games against Texas, obviously that 116-point posting, and then a few days later beating Baylor, posting like 97 points in overtime. And I think everyone kind of recognizes that offensive production probably isn't the most sustainable, particularly in the Big 12, where it's a league that's primed so much on its defense, and there's so many good defensive teams in Big 12. Like you said, Oklahoma State's one of them. Obviously, Iowa State does a really good job on the defensive side. There's a lot of teams in the Big 12. Kansas does a really good job on the defensive side as well. That when you kind of put things all together, right, like being able to score 116 points and 97 points probably isn't the most reliable thing to bank on. But we've also now seen K-State win a couple rock fights or ugly games in the Big 12 too, against West Virginia and Oklahoma State, where they didn't hit all their shots or things weren't completely working for them on the offensive end. And I know Jerome Tang spoke after the game about how being able to win games in multiple ways in the Big 12 is really important because there's a lot of times you're just not going to have shots falling. But this is an offensive team right now that looks like they have one guy that they can bank on to make some crazy shots every game with Marquise Noel. And obviously he scored at least 20 points, I think, in every Big 12 game, scored 30 in at least 2 of them. But to be able to overcome a semi-off night for Keontae Johnson, where he just scores 12 points and goes 5 of 11 from the field, like it says a lot about what K-State was able to get on the defensive end against Oklahoma State. And I know Oklahoma State's one of the worst Power 5 offensive teams in the country, but still, like, they played well defensively, and I think that's something where K-State showed some improvement.
Yeah, and really, there were still some things to like about K-State offensively. It wasn't as good as it had been in previous games, but K-State was still good at the free throw line, and they also shot the three at a pretty average mark. I mean, they were 33%, so nothing special, but they hit some at critical times. really, to me, the key is Marquise Noel was 5 of 10 from three. So he continues to be efficient when he's shooting from deep, which is a very important thing to hit for him, because last year we saw that there was range and that you could shoot it, but it was more because of volume and the percentages weren't as good. Percentages are up this year. Ish Massoud has hit a couple of big shots in back-to-back games now, and him getting consistency from three to where when he does touch it, like, he is open a lot on those catch and shoots. And if he is going to be consistent with the shot, then he is a legitimate piece they can put on the floor. So I think there were little things I like about that. I don't think it is insignificant, like you were talking about either, about Keontae Johnson having an off night. I mean, for him, it was 12 points, ties the lowest output he's had all season with his game against Abilene Christian. And those points really, like, it didn't feel like he came alive until late in the game offensively. But the fact that K-State was able to push through that and survive, that's a pretty significant deal. And to show that means that they can step up, do some things moving forward. And a few of the other guys came through for him as well, and they were able to defend hard enough. Part of it is, I mean, Oklahoma State is a terrible offensive team. We know this. Their offense is basically let Caleb Boone pound the ball inside and then cross your fingers that we're going to actually make some threes tonight, which is typically not the case. And it wasn't on Tuesday against K-State. They shot 23%. Bryce Thompson was terrible. Each time they jacked up a three. I mean, that's just one of those, let Oklahoma State shoot those. Make them do something other than a layup, and you can beat Oklahoma State. K-State did it. And I would honestly probably equate that game to, I mean, like, go back to the Dolphins and Jets this past weekend. The Dolphins knew all they had to do was win the game. And I think the reason why it was so low scoring and just ugly offensively is because Mike McDaniel knew all he had to do was outscore the Jets just barely. He knew their offense wasn't going to score on the Dolphins defense, so he could play the field goal game and just battle it out. I think K-State was content with, I mean, they would have loved to have scored 100 points if they could have, but they weren't going to go uber fast and play like their hair was on fire. And I think we saw that. And they did a lot of good things in the game. Now, the one thing they struggled with was it wasn't offensive rebounding, because they were actually close to State in offensive rebounding. The issue was that what the two teams did with the offensive rebounds. Oklahoma State ends up with 16 second chance points. K-State ends up with 0. Do you have any like theories or what the logic would be to that, why Oklahoma State was successful and why K-State was not when they got the second chances?
Yeah, I think it just kind of has to do with the type of interior presence that K-State has. Like, it's not like Naquan Tomlin or Bebe Igiola are the most physically imposing bigs on the inside. I don't think that their skill set or their strongest gifts are on the glass. I mean, you kind of look at what they produced this year, rebounding numbers wise. I mean, Noel is obviously one of K-State's lesser rebounders at 3-game, but, you know, just to kind of put that in perspective, like, Naquan Tomlin's only getting 5.8 rebounds a game, and Bebe is only getting 3.8 rebounds a game. Neither of those are the high on the team. Keontae Johnson actually leads the team in rebounds. So I don't really think that they had a great matchup on the inside against someone like Caleb Boone, who's pretty physical, known as a strong rebounder for Oklahoma State as well. So I think that that's something that maybe if you want to circle a concern for K-State looking ahead to the rest of the Big 12, and really maybe even this weekend against a team like TCU that has a traditional big, that rebounding and offensive second chance opportunities is something that I think that they could struggle with, but also just keeping opponents off the defensive glass from K-State's perspective is maybe a little bit tough too. Like, I think it's going to be hard for K-State to get a lot of second chance opportunities because they don't have an uber gifted rebounder. I know Jerome Tang talks a lot about how what attracted him to these bigs was the fact that they had speed and they could run the floor and that they're pretty skilled, particularly Tomlin. But that also maybe leaves something to be desired on the glass. And this weekend, when you're going against someone like Eddie Lampkin, who's around 7 foot, 300 pounds, like, I don't think that's a great matchup for K-State on the inside. Talking about the battle on the glass. So you need your guards, you need your Cam Carters, your Keontae Johnsons, your Ish Massoud in particular, I feel like, to really kind of give K-State a little bit more on the glass as a rebounder, because none of those guys in particular are giving K-State a ton. I mean, Keontae's obviously at 7 rebounds a game. Like, I don't know how much more you can really ask of him on the glass, but Kim Carter's only at 3.2. Desi Sills is at 3.1. And obviously Ish, just one of the reasons he struggled to get on the floor early in the season was his lack of rebounding. I know that's something that Coach Tang talked a lot about early in the year. I mean, it's just 1.5 rebounds a game. So those are things that you want to see improved. And I think that rebounding is one of the biggest weaknesses of this K-State team really as a whole. When you kind of look at it, I mean, their offensive rebounding rate isn't great. So all those things kind of considered, like, it's kind of tough when you don't have a traditional big that can bang in the inside and get good positioning, because they don't have someone who's really large. And not to mention that David Gassan's not playing either.
Yeah, well, and that is a big concern for this weekend, because if you look at TCU and what they bring to the table, 3 of their top 5 minute getters are listed as forwards or centers. And then even one of those guys that isn't listed as a forward or a center, one of their guards, Damian Baugh, he's 6'4", and has plenty of length. And that's going to be a concern for K-State. Like you said, where really when you're looking at what they're going to do inside, you've only got Keontae Johnson, Ish Massoud, and Bebe Igiola when Gassan isn't available. And that's a little dicey, especially because those guys have all gotten into foul trouble at various points. Keontae not as much, but we've seen Bebe and Ish both in that regard. So K-State's going to have to kind of focus up here. And Naquan Tomlin obviously will contribute there as well. But, I mean, he's a guy that probably is going to end up a little bit more around the perimeter, because typically he's going to end up on one of the more athletic guys they have. So, like, you're not going to put Naquan Tomlin on Eddie Lampkin, I wouldn't imagine. And he's ended up in
you want to
foul
put
trouble.
Bebe on him either.
Well, Bebe might get bowled over. I don't know what the move's going to be there for Lampkin. Whatever K-State does, though, like, the obvious key to this weekend is, I wouldn't say how you approach the Oklahoma State game, because Caleb Boone did shred you inside. I mean, Caleb Boone had like 23 in the game on Tuesday night. But OSU only had one other guy in double figures, and nobody did anything from the perimeter. TCU equally as bad of a shooting team as Oklahoma State. The Horned Frogs are shooting under 30% from 3 this season. Even some of their better players, when they jack up a 3, I can't fault you for letting it happen. Like, that's fine. Let it go, because I don't think they're that good. Mike Miles is a talented player, but everybody else seems to like him a lot more than I do. He is great. You have to worry about him, but I don't think you need to worry about him too much. So I just think K-State's going to have to find a way to do whatever they can to at least limit the stuff happening inside, and force just a few more times some kickouts or the paint touches, and make TCU feel the need to shoot more shots from the perimeter. Because if you do that, you're going to have a leg up. Now, that's where the rebounding is going to become crucial, because I don't think that you can survive against TCU by giving up and losing the offensive rebounding battle, giving up 15 of those, and then the second chance points being as efficient. And so I think K-State's one thing that I would hope that they've worked on this week is finding yourself in better position after a shot goes up, because I think that's what a lot of this comes down to. Is it's great to go for the basketball, but also at times, like, make sure you've got a man near you. That way, if the other team does get the ball, you're ready to go into defensive mode again, just as much as you are to go back and play offense. But I don't know. That's really my biggest concern, is just the size of TCU and what they could bring to the table. But similar to what, I mean, you and Gabe brought this up earlier in the week when we were talking, but like, what other team in the Big 12 other than Kansas has a duo that's better than what K-State has in Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson? Because I at this stage, I don't think there's anybody outside of KU where you could say Jalen Wilson and Grady Dick. And that bodes well for K-State, because they can go into any game with that duo knowing they have a chance to win. And that's why I'm not like overly concerned for them going on the road to Fort Worth this weekend. They could lose this game. There's probably a better chance than not that they lose this game. It's a road game in the Big 12 against a good team, but also it shouldn't concern you like, oh, we got TCU this weekend, any more than any other random game in the conference would be.
Yeah, to go back to the point that you said about K-State having maybe the best duo in the Big 12, I think that they're right there. I think there's a couple other groups that you can maybe put into that conversation. I think Baylor's guard duo of Cryer and Flagler, or Cryer and George, or Flagler and George, or whatever, are all really good. But I don't know if, like, like as a trio, that's when they're at their strongest. Like when you take one of them away, like it makes the others not as good. I think Texas has a really good backcourt as well. Obviously with Marcus Carr and Tyrese Hunter, but I don't think that anyone in the league has a better 1-2 than Kansas and Kansas State do. And I think Kansas probably has the best top 3 when you include someone like McCullough into that group, just with how much he gives them on the defensive side. And McCullough's not like maybe the most gifted offensive player at times, but he does give them a lot on the defensive side. And I've been really impressed with someone like KJ Adams this year. I know he went off against Oklahoma and went for 22, but he's obviously someone that's in a much different mold of a Bill Self center, right? Like he's not Mitch Lightfoot. He's not David McCormick. He's very far from Udoka Azubuike. Like he's a 6'7", 6'8" athletic center. Like he's very different than what we're kind of used to seeing out of the team in Lawrence. But yeah, I think that what's really allowed K-State to kind of surge up, not just the AP top 25 rankings this past week, but also just kind of in the minds of college basketball pundits, is the fact that they have such a good duo. Like, I don't know how much their supporting cast is awesome. Like, if you take away Keontae or you take away Marquise, like, I don't think you feel awesome about, you know, the rest of your supporting cast of Cam Carter and Naquan Tomlin and Baby Giola and Ish Masood and Desi Sills. Like, I think that those two stars that K-State has really helps make everyone else a lot better, but it also helps make the entire team so much more successful because they count for so much that opponents have to think about and scout for on the defensive side. And I think I said this to someone that I was sitting next to in Baylor or at Baylor. I always say in Baylor. That doesn't really make sense. It's not really a town. At Baylor, that Marquise Noel to me is just incredibly difficult to guard because he'll pull up from the logo, but he'll also drive and get to the teeth of the defense and hit some circus shot like he did with the left hand that Scott Drew pointed out after the game, or he'll dish it to a really good cutter, whether that's Naquan Tomlin or Keontae Johnson. Like those are two common cutters that K-State uses. Like I think Marquise is just really difficult to scout against and guard against because he's very unpredictable and he's proving to be very good at a lot of different things. I think his 3-point percentage is up to like 38% on the year. So you obviously have to guard him on the perimeter and he's not afraid to check it from way deep. But yeah, like I think K-State's duo at the top makes them really difficult to beat. And it's one of the reasons why like I'm picking them to beat TCU this weekend is because when you have a lead guard playing as well as Marquise Noel is, it's really hard to pick against that team in college basketball. And when you have a secondary option like Keontae, who is probably going to give you at least 15 points a game. I know he only had 12 against Oklahoma State, but you can probably bank around at least 15, 17 points a game, a couple threes, quality defense, 5, 6, 7 rebounds a game. Like it's hard to beat a team with a really good dynamic duo like that in college basketball.
Yeah, well, I do think that the unpredictability for Noel is important. And honestly, I think he's scoring better. He's turned into an even better player this year than what he was last year for K-State. But I think what helps is that the guy that he is, and I mean, he has other guys, but the main guy that he can dish the ball to this season isn't a dude that is similarly sized to him like Nigel Pack was, where when Marquise Noel would drive last year or have the ball in his hands, you know, it's either a shot or likely the pass has to go back out to the perimeter because Nigel Pack is the other offensive option on this team. Whereas now it's more so when he is driving into the lane, the shot can either go up or he can flip it to somebody that's closer by or throw a lob to a Naquan Tomlin or a Keontae Johnson that can actually finish it. Or, I mean, you don't understand, Alec, because you've not been around, but the fact that Bebe Igiola and David Gasson know how to catch the basketball is a gift from God for the Wildcats. Like they had
Kofi
bigs
was really bad about catching the ball too a lot.
Well, he was at least, like superior physically.
But he was also scoring 20 and 10 and was an All-American.
Yeah, exactly. If Davion Bradford and McCall Mayween were doing that, like great. And I shouldn't say that about Mac. Like McCall Mayween needs to be remembered a little bit better than maybe he does. He won a Big 12 championship. He served a good role, but it did seem like he kind of regressed in the hands department. So the fact that bigs can catch the ball and finish when they get it, that benefits Marquise Noel this year. And for guys that are just like scoring guards, it can become easier to predict what they are going to do because you know that the option is They either shoot it here or they shoot it there. And the fact that Marquise, not only is it that he is willing to pass the basketball, but he is really, really good at passing the basketball. That's a significant deal too. And I mean, it's a much different thing, but I'll use this because I compare it to stuff that I see a lot. Like I watch the Dallas Mavericks. I'm a Mavs fan, and one of the things that makes Luka Doncic really tough to guard is the fact that yes, he will pull up and shoot from anywhere. He can finish when he gets inside, but he is probably one of the top 5 passers in the NBA. Like he can make any kind of pass. And he's a little bit taller and much more thicker than what Marquise Noel is.
Are you calling your
But
best player
Marquise,
fat?
yeah, a little bit. I mean, he's he's like, yeah, Luka's a little chubby for an NBA player, but I mean, he still gets the job done. So who cares? And he actually uses it to his benefit at times. But like that's kind of one of the things that Marquise Noel has going for him right now is that the defense isn't going to know what he's going to do. And the fact that he's been able to add in shooting still, it's now closer to 39% than it is 38% from three and all of that kind of blows me away because I really like, I just thought of him more as a volume guy that was probably going to shoot like 33% and maybe lower than that even, but I'm okay with him taking some shots. He's a legit shooter this year, and that's a big boost to K-State. And then it helps that I think he's always had the passing ability. Typically, if you're a smaller guy and you have some deficiencies in certain departments, you learn how to pass and be a smarter basketball player. I think he's always had that, but now this year he actually has the horses that can finish for him, and we've seen that with Keontae, Naquan, and whoever else may be in the game at the time. So that's a big benefit to K-State, and I think that is what makes. I mean, you talked about the guard duo and Waco, and really, I mean, there's 3 of them. Like you can have Flagler and Cryer, and then throw in George, and George is probably their best player at this point. Texas has good guard play, but I think it helps when you can have guys that you have a dude that can play on the perimeter and facilitate from there, and then a guy that is versatile like Keontae who can finish inside, he can bang inside with guys, but he can also stretch it out. And I think that the fluidity and the flexibility of K-State's top 2 players is what makes them probably either the best duo or the second best, because obviously Wilson and Dick are very talented. But K-State has something very special in the fact that you can have your one and then your hybrid 3 or 4 and Keontae be those 2 guys, because some only have it in the front court and others only have it in the back court. And the fact that K-State has it with guys that are in totally different realms of where they're going to play on the basketball floor is important, and that's why they're in this position right now.
Well, and I think to kind of add on to that, you talk about how Keontae plays a little bit of a different role. Keontae essentially plays every role for this K-State team because he's a wing. And not to turn this into a huge NBA draft discussion, especially for someone who's not like the biggest NBA fan and really doesn't really watch too much until the playoffs come around because I'm absorbed by college basketball so much more. But, with the NBA draft, very few times last year did we see a center go. Like that's obviously become a huge thing, whether it's guys like Kofi Coburn, someone I covered, or Oscar Tshiebwe is another good example, or Drew Timme, or Hunter Dickinson, or maybe even Zach Edey this year and Trace Jackson Davis. Like they don't necessarily pique the interest of NBA teams too much because they lack skill. And guards kind of are, or point guards in particular, I should say, are maybe losing some interest to NBA teams as well because they tend to be smaller and they maybe don't do things as well, like rebounding, or maybe have some defensive deficiencies in comparison to someone like a wing, like Keontae is. Like Keontae can handle the basketball. Is that his biggest strength? No. Like obviously he's been a little bit turnover prone this year. He's averaging almost 3 turnovers a game, which is a lot more than what you would want for someone that you're going to put the ball in his hands. But those have started to go down a little bit as the season has progressed. But Keontae can handle the basketball. He can pull up from 3. He can get to the rim. He can finish at the mid-range. He can obviously rebound as the team's leading rebounder. Like he can do so many different things. And wings are so valuable in basketball because they're so versatile in the different skill set that they can give you. I mean, just kind of think about how the number 1 team in the country right now, Houston, is built. Houston's essentially a team that's built completely on wings. Like I know Marcus Sasser is someone that a lot of people view as being one of the best guards in the country, but like, I don't know if I really view Marcus Sasser as being a point guard. To me,
No.
he's a little bit more of a wing. Like Jawan Roberts is 6'7". Like they have a whole bunch of guys who are between like 6'5" and 6'8". Tremont Mark is 6'5". Jamal Shed is like their point guard, and he's 6'1", but he's kind of like a 2 at the same time. Like, when you build teams based off of wings, like it's so much more difficult to defend them because they're positionless almost, but they're also really good defensively because they can guard 3-4 positions at a time. And that's become so valuable. And that's why teams like Houston have had so much success. That's why we saw a team like Kansas last year win the national title, is they were led by a really strong pair of wings in Ochai Agbaji and Christian Brown. What is the right way to say it?
It's Brown, but yeah.
It's Braun, like Ryan Braun. Okay. That always bothered me, by the way. I know that he's not liked very highly, particularly in K-State circles. I can get on with the name pronunciation not being well liked. I'll join the crowd on that one. That one bothers me. But those two wings, Jalen Wilson played on the wing last year for them. But Baylor, the national title team, like obviously Davion Mitchell and Adam Flagler were more guards, and Jared Butler was a guard, but like all of them could do different things. Like when you have guys who are diverse in their skill set and gifted in doing different things on a basketball court, that's what makes teams really, really good, in my opinion. And it's the way we've seen the game trend. Like, why would you want a big on the floor that's not skilled? Like, why would you want to play 4 against 5 in certain areas if that one player can't handle, if that one player can't guard at a high level, if that one player can't pass at a high level? Like, those are all things that are really important to an offense. And defensively, like if you're playing a player who can't leave the paint, like that's really hard to defend a lot of times. And playing drop coverage can put you in a weak spot. Like K-State's in a position right now where, yeah, they play a big with Bebe and they play a big with Naquan Tomlin, but Naquan's really athletic. Naquan can probably guard 4-5 positions if he had to. Bebe isn't as gifted athletically as Naquan is, and he's obviously a little bit thinner, but like he's really long and he can probably guard 2-3 positions if he has to. Like Keontae can guard 4 positions, maybe 5 if he has to. I mean, he played a little bit of 5 at Texas ish, although he's not a great defender. Like you can kind of put him on a 5 if you have to. And like, I think that's what's really making this K-State team so difficult for opponents right now, is that defensively, and I know they haven't been great defensively the last couple of games, but you can kind of see some of the interest of the defense and why it could be intriguing and why it could be talented is because guys can do multiple things, but also on the offensive end, everyone can seem to kind of get to the rim. Everyone can kind of make their own shot. Everyone can pull up from the perimeter. Like all these things are being put together in an offensive scheme that is really effective right now. And it's all led by Marquise Noel.
Well, I think the important thing when it comes to defense isn't necessarily are you a good defense or are you, well, let me say it this way. I don't think that being a good defense or being a bad defense is as simple as people want to make it be when it comes down to, oh, your defensive numbers are bad or your offensive numbers are bad. At the end of the day, what makes you a good defense is if you're limiting the opposing team from scoring enough to beat you. And I think the position that K-State is in right now, they're finally playing offense in basketball. That had not been played over the last 3 seasons in Manhattan. And really, even when they were good, they seemed to not want to worry too much about offense. My biggest pet peeve is a guy that loves the game of basketball. The way you win games is by putting the ball in the hole. You can play as much defense as you want, but at the end of the day, if you don't score a single bucket, you're not winning a basketball game. That's how it works, you know? Like
I agree to a point. Like
if you put 0 points on the scoreboard, you're not going to win the damn game. Like,
yeah,
so
I agree.
You better learn to play some offense,
particularly at the NBA level, but at the college level, where guys generally aren't very good shooters, you need to be a good defensive team. And I'll use Purdue as an example. Last year, a team that I was obviously closer to than maybe some of our listeners were, but Purdue was obviously very good. And I think a lot of people enjoyed watching them last year because of the freak of nature that Jaden Ivey was, the freak of nature that Zach Edey still is. Like Purdue was in the 90s, I think, at the end of the year in adjusted defensive efficiency. And that team should have been really good defensively. They had really good. They had guys who profile as good defenders. Jaden Ivey profiles as a good defender, but he just didn't care. There's other people on that team that have strengths and weaknesses defensively, but they just didn't care to defend. Like, I think there's guys on this K-State team defensively right now who maybe don't have the highest interest in defending. Like I think Ish is maybe in that group. I think Cam is maybe in that group at times. But when Cam turns it on and wants to defend, like Cam will guard you. Like Cam will get up in your grill.
Honestly, I think Keontae Johnson has a little bit of that in him.
He does. But when Keontae wants to guard, Keontae will guard.
I actually think that I don't know. We haven't seen as much of him, so it's tough to say. I just don't think Ish is a good defender.
Yes.
I think maybe he wants to. I think sometimes maybe he wants to play more than what Keontae does at times. But also the thing that Keontae has is he's not afraid to go grab a rebound for you. And like you're saying, when he wants to lock in, like he has the body and the size and everything
and the
to
other
truly
thing
lock
for
in
Keontae,
and do something.
And the other thing for Keontae, and I learned this in the year that I covered Illinois and that they were a 1 seed, is that like their best player on that team was obviously Ayo Dosunmu. And Ayo was not a very good college defender, but then he gets to the NBA and the Bulls turn him into a really valuable defender. I don't think Jerome Tang and Kansas State are like circling Keontae on every scouting report and being like, you need to be our best defender today. Because if Keontae is expending a ton of energy every single trip down the court defensively, then it's that much less that he can do on the offensive end. And I think the coaching staff recognizes that they need him to be able to score 17 to 20 points a game or whatever it may be for them to really win. So it's Keontae, turn it on and guard when we really need you to guard. If we need to stop, like we need you to be the one that's going to convert for us on that end. And like that, we saw that at the end of the Texas game. I know K-State ended up winning that game by 13, but they put him at the 5 and matched up small, and Keontae was on the 5, and Keontae was doing a really good job of making it difficult for Texas at that point. I think it was Disu playing the 5 at that point late in the game. Like that shows the ability of Keontae Johnson defensively, whereas when he wants to guard, like he'll get up in you and he'll make your life hell.
Well, and
that's the up for coaching, by the way, like Jerome Tang.
Yes, give us 5. No, so that's my point. Is I think this team, even though at times maybe numbers would say they're not like this great defensive team, they have the pieces and they have the guys that can lock in and play defense. We saw a little bit of that on Tuesday against Oklahoma State. We've seen that in certain moments this year. Obviously, Naquan Tomlin's body lends himself to being able to make some pretty impressive plays defensively. Marquise Noel is an absolute pest when it comes to defense, and he's always looking to try and swipe the ball. So this team, they have the offensive ability, and the thing that they have that some teams don't that are really good offensive teams is the willingness to lock in at the right time to play defense. It's like that's why Baylor won a national championship in 2021 is because they were a great offensive team. I mean, they could shoot the lights out, but they also, and part of it helps that Davion Mitchell was willing and ready to guard anybody at 100% all the time, but they were all willing to chip in and lock down defensively when they absolutely had to have it. And that's, to me, a bigger importance than just being a good defensive team is being a team that can score and you can lock in defensively when you absolutely have to have it. And K-State does have it right now.
If you ever want to entertain yourself watching defense, go watch Davion Mitchell's film from the Baylor national title game. He put people in hell for an entire season. Like and there was a video that floated around on social media a week or so ago. He's obviously with the Kings now, I believe. Mm-hmm. And he guarded all 5 guys on a single possession for the Kings and just is relentless. I mean, he puts other teams in hell with his ability. And I think that that's what we've really kind of seen with this Baylor team this season struggle, is that obviously they have some new pieces with people like Keontae George who are still maybe learning some of the defensive principles of the college game. But we've seen their defensive efficiency fall to sub 50. I think last week when K-State played them, it was around like 63 or whatever. And Baylor's defensive efficiency fell at the end of the year. They won the national title because they had those losses at the end of the season because of the COVID and everything.
Yeah.
But that team was the best defensive team in the country. This Baylor team is not. And I think that's one of the reasons why they've, kind of struggled this year against some better opponents is that their defense just isn't as good.
Well, yeah. And I also think like outside of Keontae George, they're having some offensive struggles right now. They need some other guys to step up. And yeah, like they are missing that big inside that they can rely on a little bit more. So we'll see.
Yeah, they don't have Everyday John.
We can say his name. We know that it's Jonathan Chamwa Chachua. We don't need to
I
do
just like the
everyday
nickname.
John. No, every time Jay Billis would repeatedly say it, I wanted to smack his face across the room. Everyday John, everyday John, everyday John.
Didn't
Stupid. Just say his name.
Fran
Chamwa
Fraschilla
Chachua.
coin
It's
that?
not that tough. I don't know. I don't think so. I think that originated inside of the Farrell Center from the Baylor staff, but I don't know. Maybe it did. I don't know the origin story of it. I just know that I heard it 1,000 times. And as a guy that was not a Baylor hater and wanted to see Baylor have success, that even pissed me off. Like I could do without calling him Everyday John every damn time. That
I like Everyday John. I think it's a great nickname. I think it's awesome. It fits
What does
him
it
so
mean?
well.
What does it mean though? What's the
He
point?
plays really hard. He shows up every day, same guy every single day.
You know
Same
who
guy in
else does that?
practice, gives
Marquise
the same
Noel.
effort,
Like
100%. Doesn't ever
he
take a
goes
play
out there
off,
and
high
drops
motor.
20 every game.
Yeah, but he doesn't
Everyday
have to do that.
Marquise.
He
We're
doesn't
gonna
have
start
to
calling
do
him
that.
Everyday Keys.
No,
Stupid.
but it's like the whole principle of it's like his motor is incredible. Like the kid plays so hard for 40 minutes. He runs the floor. He never gets tired. He guards like no one's
I guess
business.
I need to stop because I'm not trying.
You're
to be
disrespecting
hard.
the Everyday John.
No, I'm not trying to be hard on him or the nickname itself. Just how many times people said it. It's like you can say his name. You can say
It's a
it.
tough
It's
name
fine.
to say. It's an even tougher name to spell, by the way.
Jonathan Chamwa Chachua. It's not that
No,
hard
I know
of
how
a
to
name
say it,
say.
but the first time I saw it, I was like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, but then you hear it once, you're fine. It's like Felix Anyudike Uzama.
Speaking of which, he's declared for the NFL draft.
Yeah, he did do that. Felix Anyudike Uzama. Tim Brando sent him to the NFL draft. So I don't know. We'll discuss more football next week and some things going on. Real quick, some final thoughts about the TCU game coming up this weekend. Everybody knows about Mike Miles, averages close to 20 a game, is going to have the ball in his hands a lot. He's going to take a lot of shots as well. But some other guys that people should probably be aware of, and the guy that might be the most concerning is Emmanuel Miller to me, because I talked about him earlier. He's got great length. He puts up numbers, and he is a threat to shoot the ball when he gets a look. And if you leave him open, he can knock down shots from the outside. So I think that's going to be a challenge for K-State. And I guess this starts, a good question here. Over the next two games, who do we think Naquan Tomlin is defending primarily? Because I think that he's the guy that if you think there's somebody that is that team's best player and they are over, 6'1", 6'2", whatever, you put Naquan Tomlin on them. So do you put Naquan Tomlin on Emmanuel Miller, I assume, tomorrow? And then in turn, who do you think he should guard against Kansas? Should it be Dick or should it be Wilson?
I would probably put Keontae on Dick. Just from the standpoint that Keontae's thicker. Like, I think Keontae will body him up a little bit more. I think if you can kind of...
I don't know, though, because, Dick's going to want to live around the perimeter. That's my only concern there. Is how much are you gonna want Keontae Johnson defending outside? No, he does not.
You see what I did there?
Yeah, and I saw what you did there.
I'm happy I was able to get that in there. That was probably inappropriate. Make sure to put the parental advisory.
It was inappropriate.
I would probably decide to put Keontae on Dick, but I agree with you that I would put Naquan Tomlin on Miller. As long as you feel that Tomlin is going to be disciplined enough to stick with his man on the perimeter at TCU. I know that Miller's hasn't shot a super high volume. I think he shot less than 33s this year, but he's making like 45% of them, which is pretty ridiculous. So maybe you're comfortable getting him a couple looks early, but you don't want him to get hot, especially a team that's not a very good 3-point shooting team like TCU. I think they're in the 200s or 300s in terms of team 3-point percentage. Yeah, they're 322 by Bart Torvik, which is awful. They're sub 30%. So you don't want him to get hot and start knocking down shots, especially at home. But yeah, I do agree that I think that you kind of want Tomlin on Miller. But then I would probably switch it up and I would probably consider putting, I don't know. God, Kansas is so good. I would probably put Keontae Johnson on Dick, and I would probably try and bother Wilson with the length of Tomlin, because Wilson's not going to hurt you as much from the perimeter as much as Dick will.
Yeah. I think it's a good test run against Emmanuel Miller this weekend to see how Naquan Tomlin is able to defend him. I really think the goal should be, I mean, obviously you want to keep him from scoring, but you should also try and limit how many fouls you're going to put up in a game. And that's kind of been a concern with Tomlin and Igiola over the course of the last week, really, is those guys have ended up in foul trouble. And that's really, it's not a good thing for K-State when David Gasson is still sidelined. And I mean, Jerome Tang and the staff, they're trying to keep it pretty discreet as to what's going on there. I think we're talking about like being weeks away from seeing David Gasson, and
real quick,
you got to try and stay healthy in there.
Real quick, to go back to the Kansas conversation and the defensive matchups, I'm really intrigued to see what they do now that I think about it a little bit more, defending KJ Adams. I almost think that's a better matchup for Tomlin than it is Igiola.
Yeah, I mean, so
because I think you want a better athlete
where guys are going to be. I mean, like,
because don't you think you want a really good athlete on Adams?
Adams is just going to play closer to the basket. So, like, I'm just worried about Grady Dick because he can shoot from the outside and he's got probably the most athleticism inside that building come Tuesday night. You don't think so?
Keontae Johnson does. I think Keontae is the best athlete every time he steps on the floor.
Well, he could be, but I mean, I think Grady Dick is pretty good there. And
no, he's definitely a great athlete. No, I don't disagree with you. I think KJ Adams is their best athlete, to be honest with you.
I don't know. Versatility wise, I just think that, I don't know. It's going to be, it might be, I mean, it's Kansas, but it might be a tough matchup for K-State, especially being limited. This is where, like, having Gasson would really help them against KU, because as much as Bebe Igiola has played well for K-State this year, he's not as mobile as Gasson can be. And it feels like there's some more versatility to what Gasson could do for them, where he can move around, who he can match up with. So we'll just kind of have to wait.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Good call there.
My concern on Naquan Tomlin and his defense, and why I think it's important this weekend, he was able to limit his foul trouble against Oklahoma State, but he fouled out against Baylor, and he had 4 against West Virginia, and he had 4 against Texas. So in 3 of 4 Big 12 games this year, Naquan Tomlin has had foul troubles. That's going to be important for him to limit. I think we get a good chance this weekend if he's on Miller, or honestly whoever he ends up on, because it's going to be somebody that can maybe stretch out a little bit. I think it'll be important to see if he can play good defense without being in serious foul trouble. And Jerome Tang talked about this after the game against Oklahoma State. It's not about avoiding foul trouble and not picking up fouls. That doesn't matter. And he was absolutely right when he said this. It more so comes down to, are they good fouls? And the problem that K-State has had with Tomlin and Igiola in particular is their fouls have not been good fouls. They've been kind of dumb fouls at times. Now, I think Igiola has gotten screwed a few times too. Like, I think they just see a big guy and they throw a foul on him when it's been bad, which, by the way, I need all the high school basketball refs that keep getting offended whenever I'm critical of officials on Twitter. I have umpired baseball since I was 13 years old. I've done it for over a decade now. I have officiated sports before. I do know what it's like, and part of the job is being criticized when you potentially miss the call. So I don't need the snarky, maybe you should put the whistle on sometime. Come out and join us and see what it's like. It can stop. I've done it before, and guess what? Basketball officiating has flat out sucked this year. So just wanted to get that out of the way. As you can tell, I'm bothered by it. And oh, hey, by the way, maybe a reason maybe there's a reason why there's officiating a crisis is probably because snarky people like you are trying to gatekeep the entire profession. That's why people don't like it sometimes. It's not because of the annoying, stupid mom that doesn't know anything about the game of basketball or baseball that's trying to rip your butt. It's more so about the people that are in it that try and act like, oh, you have to hit this benchmark and you don't be so uppity about it. Be accepting of people. And when they're good, promote them, move them forward. It really bothers me. And it's not,
So
no,
is
it's not
Trevor
just
McEwen
Trevor.
the one bothering you?
He's one of them. He's a great guy. I gave some of his, I was a menace to the refs at the K-State rec during intramurals. I did get ejected from a game one time.
I need to hear this story right now.
So
I need to hear this story
and look,
right
it's
now.
not just him. It's my high school golf coach and broadcast teacher, Coach Torg. Great guy. Appreciate everything he did for me. But anytime I say something about the refs, he comes after me on Twitter. And it's like Tuesday night, it really bothered me, or maybe it was Saturday. And I'm like, I know for a fact you are not watching K-State right now. You are definitely watching the KU game, whatever. So what happened? It was first round of the playoffs. And we were getting hounded. I mean, just couldn't get a call. It was a very physical game. And I took it upon myself. I was like a good player coach. I wasn't going to let my team, like my other players, get charged with it. I was like, hey, you don't need to talk to him. I'll handle this. And after it just kept going on and it didn't feel like we were getting a call, we had guys just like dudes were knocking us down inside and going over our backs and just a bunch of stuff. We had a kid go up for a rebound. He gets shoved out of the way and I jump up and I spin around and I clap. I just scared my dog and I clap and I clap and I point immediately at the ref that's on the baseline. And I said, if that's not a foul, then you better tee me up. And good for her. She did, by golly. She did give me the tech and I'm proud of her for doing so after I asked for it. But man, it pissed me off and I'm not afraid to call out bad in this league. I had picked up one earlier in the game because I got like smacked in the eye, and I'm like holding my eye and going down the floor, and I was just like, I don't know how they didn't call a foul here. And one of the refs even says like, "Are you good?" And I'm like, "Well, I didn't smack myself in the face." And they teed me up for that. They didn't like that. So
I lived with two friends of mine in college, both refed as like a part-time job in college.
Refs, it's very important. It's great what they do and everything. It's awesome. Also, by the way, it is tough to ref when part of your job during basketball season is to cover a basketball team that plays on Tuesday nights, when high school basketball is happening. There are other things that limit me in my schedule from doing it. But yes, I have officiated before. So just, I need the social media refs to get off my back.
So yeah, I lived with two friends in college who were referees for 3 or 4 years at our campus rec center. And one of them used to get maybe a little triggered a little quick. Like he's easy to get under his skin. So we used to kind of like joke with him and be like, why don't you just tee people up and whatever? He's like, oh, I do. Yeah. Like I'll tee people up real quick. I'm like, don't you have to like fill out paperwork and everything when you do that? He's like, yeah, I don't care. I can't deal with this. I'm like, TJ, you're such a hardo.
Oh no.
TJ, just relax. Like, who cares? Like, you let these guys get under your skin way too easily.
I think technical fouls need to be given out more in the game of basketball.
Oh my God, no.
Well, okay.
Oh my God.
No. Listen, not to players for like saying and one or celebrating after buckets. Like that's really stupid. But when coaches are hounding refs like relentlessly and the refs are just like, hey, no more. And then 5 minutes later, it's like, hey, I told you no more. Let's stop. There's a reason why the technical foul is there. Give out a technical foul, and more times than not, like that coach is going to get off your butt.
You want to know my opinion on the technical foul? If you're an official and you call a technical foul, you're soft. Like, you know what you're signing up for. Unless you really, really cross the line and you say something that obviously crosses the line, like you gotta be penalized for it. Do not stop the game and call a T. Because if you do that, like, you're just showing that what they're saying is bothering you and that it's like taking away from what you're trying to focus on. Do not make the game about yourself. That's what technical fouls do. And I hate that. Like the NBA is awful with technical fouls. It's terrible. And that it makes it so much less enjoyable to watch.
Well, I mean, yeah,
that's coming from someone who doesn't think that college officiating is good. But I hate how soft and how quick NBA officials are with technical fouls.
I think coaches need them a lot more. Certain ones and in certain situations. Like I'm not just, for your random drive-by, hey, you missed that down there, bozo. Like you don't need to tee guys up for that. But like when you're getting the theatrics and it's every time and homeboy's losing his mind on you, like Mark Fox, you think back to the K-State Cal game. Mark Fox had some moments where I was like, just team up. And guess what? It all stops. Yes, because you have them for a reason. It's the same thing in baseball. Like the umpires give out warnings because, hey, guess what? We're not having any more of this. You do any more of the arguing balls and strikes, or you do any more of saying this or that or whatever, you're done. Just stop.
Listen, I'm all for like
if you do that, then you're gone. And I think basketball officials need more of that, is to dish out the tee, and guess what? Any of your troubles will stop. They will get off your back more times than not.
That's brutal. That's just a terrible opinion.
No, I don't.
Why would you want the game stopped? Why do you want the game to turn into a ref show? Why do you want to watch free throws?
That's not what this does. I mean, it takes 1 minute.
Terrible.
It takes 1 minute. You tee the guy up and you let a guy go shoot one free throw.
That's brutal.
You can't just let these coaches.
No one turns on a TV. No one pays a ticket to see. No one does that.
Oh, no. The crowds love technical fouls.
No one wants to go see a technical foul fest.
How many technical fouls do you see a game? You don't. You can go
Less
3, 4, 5
like
games.
It that way.
You can. Yeah, exactly. So if you add one, and I'm not saying you do it every game, because guess what? The coaches would learn. I'm just saying that there need to be more of them used. When you have an unruly coach, like, guess what? I love Bill Self. I think he's a great basketball coach. I think he's an entertaining guy. But
you're gonna get heat for that.
I know people don't like that when I have an honest opinion. Look, hey, guess what? I hate Kansas. I went to Kansas State. I grew up in the state of Kansas, and I can count on both hands the amount of people that went to the University of Kansas that I would call friends. Most of the time, I don't find them as very likable people. I don't feel bad about saying that. There is an arrogance that goes with it, And if you're one of my friends that went to KU, then hey, you're an elite club right there. But sometimes basketball would be better if you didn't just let Bill Self waltz up and down the sideline and do whatever he wanted and say what he wanted the entire game. Just turn around and team up and get it over with.
Yeah, and then he's off your back the rest of the game. Tantrums are entertaining.
You think that's more like, I don't know. I don't get why
it's
you
more
like
entertaining than watching a ref ball see some kid shoot a free throw.
Yeah, I don't think you understand. I don't want you ever to go into law enforcement, because we would live
I don't ever want to do that either.
Yeah, we would live in a terrible spot, because you wouldn't want to police anybody. You just let anything happen.
Here's a great example. So I love Kirk Kriisa. I really enjoyed watching last year's Arizona basketball team, as much as our coworker Gabe hates Arizona for obvious reasons. He went to Arizona State. There was a game last year where Arizona was on TV, and I was watching, and Arizona had a sideline inbounds right by the broadcast table. And Kerr turns to his left or to his right and says, just loud enough for the microphones to pick up, "Who invited these people wearing the stripes tonight?" as the official is right next to him. That's hilarious. That like made my entire night watching that game, aside from the fact that I saw Arizona, which was very entertaining. Like, college basketball needs more of that. College basketball needs more taunting. College basketball needs more entertainment value.
I don't know the context of that. Like, he was just,
they were just not having a good game. So Kerr was like, you know what? I'm just gonna. Who invited these people in the stripes tonight? That's hilarious.
I mean, yeah, whatever. Like, that's just a throwaway comment. But like, you have to understand that when they're, I don't know, you're not going to agree with me on this, so we'll just move on. But I think you're wrong, because I think that you want to play a game without rules. I think that's what you want.
I like being entertained.
I am entertained when a bad guy gets a technical foul.
Yeah, you're not going to be entertained when the good guys get technical fouls more frequently.
No, but the crowd is very excited about that. Also, I don't know that like Jerome Tang has a ton of technical fouls anymore. He got one this year, right? He's got one at least. I don't think he's got many more coming his way.
I think he has one.
I would
Yes,
I
he
would
has
wager
one
that
because he walked in the post-game press conference and said
yeah.
that his mom was going to be upset with him for it,
Yeah.
which was funny.
So see, I'm not too worried about the good guys getting technical fouls. I haven't had to worry about that too much. Like Bruce wasn't going to get many technical fouls. Although I would say at times I would have teed Bruce up. Like that's
what do
just
you
how
think
that
Bruce
kind
was
of goes.
saying to get technical fouls?
I don't think it's as much as what he would say.
Like how exactly would you how exactly and how do you think it would sound?
I don't know, because I think it would just be like constant like jabbering and like you know telling somebody that they missed it and like his actions and just I don't know. I don't know how to explain that to you, but I don't think he would get it in the standard way of like going after an official aggressively. I think it would just be like throughout the entire game, be like, John, can you give us that call? Can you give us this call? Like, why are they getting that? No, you can't put me on the spot like that right now. We'll see if it pops up.
Mason has a great Bruce Weber impersonation for those of you listening, by the way.
Well, it's all right.
He has a good Jerome Tang one too, by the way. That one I think is even better.
It's working out. Let's dive into this real quick before we end things here. So Big 12 basketball this weekend. Obviously, we're in Fort Worth watching the Cats and the Frogs. Other games this weekend taking place in the Big 12 that everybody should be aware of. The action starts with West Virginia and Oklahoma at 11 a.m. on Saturday. We'll see how that ends up playing out. West Virginia needs a win here. I mean, they're 0-4 in conference play, and this is going to be one of your better chances for a road win all season. So we'll see what they do there. The rest of the schedule is Iowa State at Kansas at 3, Oklahoma State and Baylor at 5 in Waco, and then Tech and Texas at 7 in Austin. So which of those games is the one that you're most interested in keeping up with? And is there anything that is uber important this weekend in the Big 12?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said there about the West Virginia-Oklahoma game is intriguing. I think that Baylor needs a win, obviously, against Oklahoma State at home, just so that they're kind of going in the right direction after getting a win at West Virginia. But to be honest with you, Mason, I think the biggest game in the Big 12 this weekend is probably Kansas State, and TCU.
Yeah.
Because I think TCU is really hungry for a win, being at 500 in league play. I think K-State getting a win on the road again in league play would be massive. And to move to 5-0, not that K-State needs a win for the Big 12 race right now. But I do think that that's probably the best game. And obviously, I mean, it's a game between two ranked teams. And I do think the Iowa State-Kansas game is intriguing, but it's at Allen. So it's just like, what are we playing for?
Go over to EMAW Online. We have our Big 12 basketball rankings that the three of us do, you, me, and Gabe. Those are up. We just average them out to how we decide the order. A lot of similarities here. You still have Texas over Iowa State. You're a big Texas believer.
Can I comment on that real quick? With Texas, I have them ahead right now of Iowa State, but I think in like 2 weeks, I don't think I'm going to. Like right now, I think that they deserve to be ahead of Iowa State, but I think Iowa State by the end of the year is going to be better.
Okay. I mean, I would agree with that maybe, but
I'm just not projecting as much with it. Maybe there was a little bit where I projected in some spots, like putting Baylor 6th, but right now I have Texas 3rd, but I almost put them behind Iowa State.
The only other big significant difference is Gabe and I had O State 7th. You had them 9th because we were just the inverse with West Virginia where we had them. That's another one where it feels like maybe you feel like West Virginia, because of who they've had to play, is in a tougher spot than Oklahoma State right now.
Yes.
Okay. Well, go check it out. You can see the full rankings there and a little bit of a little explainer as to why each person put them there. We give a little bit of a breakdown in our thoughts. We'll see how it turns out this weekend in the Big 12. Should be exciting. We'll have another one of these on Monday. to recap what went down in Fort Worth and more so to get ready for what's going to take place with KU on Tuesday, because that is going to be one heck of an environment. Final thing, what did you think of the crowd Tuesday night?
It was good. It was loud. It was impressive. I'm excited to see it against Kansas because I know it'll be ratcheted up to another level.
Yep, multiply it, throw in some F-bombs and a ton of hate, and that's what you're going to have Tuesday night. So it's going to be fun, but the Wildcats have to focus on the Frogs this weekend. I don't know what Gabe has done yet, but you and I both think K-State gets the win down in Fort Worth. So we think the Wildcats will be 5-0, and with that, it will be a top 10 matchup most likely come Tuesday in Manhattan. So that'll do it for Alec and I. We will have full coverage on Saturday from Fort Worth as the Wildcats and the Frogs get ready to square off in the Big 12. And then we will be back with another podcast on Monday to preview everything that will go down with K-State and KU.